experience, working experience in these countries. And what I would like to focus today is to talk about challenges of multinational companies entering emerging markets. So, like it was mentioned before, Asia or Africa. And I will use some examples. I will use some examples on sub-Saharan Africa, because obviously we are here. So we'll talk about that. Okay, is it loaded? Okay. Now, before I get into the challenges, I'm sure you've seen this before. You know, we are talking about Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, as one of the key emerging markets. And I just want to tell you that for us, the way how we look at it, it's really like one country, okay? And that, I think, is an eye-opening statement for investors or for global companies. If you look at a sub-Saharan Africa as some of 40 countries or so, you will never really get attention of investors to go and go big time. But if you look at sub-Saharan Africa as the third largest country or sum of countries in the world, just behind China and India, if you talk about Africa as fast is one of the fastest growing population-wise continent in the world. Actually, if you check, you would see that out of the top 10 fastest growth rates in the world, out of top 20 countries in the world, 19 of the top 20 are in sub-Saharan Africa. So definitely fast-growing continent. Land size bigger than US, China, India, and Europe combined. And obviously, here we are in South Africa. You know everything about natural resources. But I think it's a very rich continent from that point of view as well. Okay. Now, why it is important to talk about emerging markets in a global context? I think we know all about the current situation in Western Europe and in North America. Actually, you know, I've been in one presentation when people suggested, drop the emerging. You know, these are the markets of the future. You know, if you are not in emerging markets today, this will become the most important markets in the very near future for everybody. So we need to be present. And I think Africa today is one of the key emerging markets because, you know, if you look at last 20 years, it was more about Central and Eastern Europe and Russia. Maybe last 15 years and 10 years, it was more about China and India. And it has become really the time for Africa in this decade and hopefully in a few decades to come. If I would list the challenges we see in the emerging markets kind of overall, you know, this would be the 5 that I would pick. And I will try to talk about them. And some of them are, hopefully most of them are familiar to you. And I will try to also tell you how P&G is approaching these challenges in emerging markets and particularly in Africa. I think if you start with understanding the market and the landscape, then we'll talk a little bit about the trade and administrative barriers, winning with government, delivering the right value equation in the developing markets. I think it's a critical question. And then obviously having the skilled and experienced workforce that you need to hire and retain for your company. Understanding the market, I think it's, again, very obvious to everybody, but before you enter the market, you need to understand the landscape. And I think for global companies like us, one of the critical components is the culture. And as you heard, I worked in Asia and I worked in Central and Eastern Europe and in America as well. I think it's always the right balance between the local culture and what you're trying to bring as a multinational into the countries and balance it right. And having the right element of the local culture in your company, but also having the right element of the global culture in the company. And making sure that you understand what are the no-nos, and even though it might be an acceptable local norm, you do not want that in the culture of the company as you enter. Obviously, understanding the competition, and that it's very important in the emerging markets because you might have the global competitors in already. Sometimes they might be longer, like in our case. We entered Africa only 20 years ago. But, you know, you need to also observe local competitors and counterfeits. I think in the emerging markets, more than anywhere else, counterfeits could be a big problem for everybody that enters the market. And I think it's one of the biggest challenges that we see, particularly in Africa, but also in China, the number of counterfeits and how quickly the counterfeits are copying your products. So you need to really stay and innovate your product very, very fast to be ahead of potential counterfeits challenge. One example from Sub-Sahara, I heard that in Tanzania, up to 50% of fast-moving consumer goods are counterfeits. Okay? So 50% of the consumption is actually not a genuine product. It is a product that looks like the same, but it is not the same. It is counterfeit. So it's very, very critical to understand. So not only competition, but the counterfeiting practices and where they are coming from. And obviously consumer needs. And I think we in P&G, we spend a lot of time on this, and I'm sure all other companies as well. But we walk to the consumer in homes. We shop together with them. We try to understand what they like about the products that they are using today, where they see opportunities for themselves, where they want the product to be better in terms of the product formulation, but also packaging, sizing, where they shop. We do shop-alongs with consumers to try to understand, and how they receive the information about the products as well. So are they watching TV? Are they listening to the radio? Are they online even nowadays? So what are the ways how they communicate? So these are kind of this is the first step that we need to take before we enter any market. And a few examples from P&G on how we address them. Relevant product formulation and sizing. I will demonstrate this. It's not very visible on the picture, but as you enter markets, and some of these pictures are from Kenya and from Nigeria, and the example is our Ariel product, laundry detergent, which is the high-quality laundry detergent product that you can find in the market. But what we found out is that you need to offer it in relevant sizes. So you cannot just copy what you can do everywhere else. You need to understand that you need to sell it in the right sizing and the right pricing. You learn from that, of course, from competition, but more from the people and the consumer in homes when you are talking to them. One interesting insight here coming from Nigeria particularly is that you might enter the emerging markets with the point of view, I need to offer the cheapest possible price, even if I need to compromise on the quality. I just need to offer the cheapest possible for people to buy, and then you get them into the category or into the laundry detergent, for instance. It is not true. For the low-income consumer, in these kind of products, it is actually so important to offer the right value, right product formulation with the right price, and you might achieve it with sizing rather than downgrading your formulation. Because if they spend 10, 15 naira on a pack of detergent, that's their only chance to make the shirt for their husband for the next day when he walks to the office clean. And they cannot afford to make a mistake. So they rather buy 2-3 naira more, but they get the quality, than to make a mistake. Because what is then, if they make a mistake, what they can do? They can buy another detergent that is going to wash it, or the husband goes in not very clean shirt to the office. There is no other choice. And usually because they do not have the disposable income, what happens is that they need to send the husband in the shirt that is not representing the family very well. And that's not what they want to do. So they cannot afford to make a mistake. They cannot buy a cheap product. And it's more true for the low-income consumer than for the high-income consumer, because if the high-income consumer makes a mistake, just throw it away and you buy another one. The low-income consumer is very aware of that. Okay? So I think having the right sizing and the right formulation is important, but I would really emphasize the right sizing and the right pricing in the market than only the formulation. Local relevant communication, I already talked about it a little bit to understand how people consume information and what is relevant for them. I think example here I would use is, you might know David Rudisha. He's the Olympic champion from London, also a couple of times a world record holder. And we entered the Olympic movement last year in a very big way, globally and locally, here in South Africa as well. This is an example from Kenya. And we supported David, and sometimes we also go the extra mile. We support the families of the Olympians, etc. And David is supporting us and is endorsing Safeguard. So we did a local relevant copy on Safeguard, having David as a spokesperson, basically, of the brand. And it links really nicely to what he does. And again, quite amazing results of that in the market. Okay? So Having the relevant communication, the relevant advertising is very, very important. And having the local touch, it's very important as well. Okay? And finally, creating a sustainable brand. And here I would use an example of Pampers. With Pampers, which is a brand that is available basically across all the emerging markets and across Africa as well, we do two things that are kind of unique. One is there is a global campaign together with UNICEF when we are trying to work together to basically work against newborn tetanus in the countries that still exist. So for every pack that you buy in a certain period of time, and the time is actually coming up now in South Africa, you buy a pack of Pampers and we automatically donate one vaccination to the countries against newborn tetanus. And together with UNICEF, we are now going country by country and we are trying to move that disease out of the countries. The last one that was declared that completely moved newborn tetanus out of the country is Uganda. So we go country by country, and in the developed markets, you contribute to the vaccination that is then donated to the emerging markets. It's every 2 years or so when we have a global campaign, and then the more developed consumers can help the less in the emerging markets. The other campaign that we do is quite unique in Nigeria and Kenya, and also in other in Asian markets, is what we call mobile clinics. And we actually sponsor a clinic that goes with a doctor and nurse to the very rural areas of Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, and educate new moms about the hygiene, about pampering, about breastfeeding, about vaccination, and this clinic just goes around. I've been in one of these clinics, and it's absolutely unbelievable that sometimes you see a 1-year-old child with mom, and it's being checked for the first time by a doctor. Okay? And so it is really how we try to create sustainable brand, but also help the communities we operate in. And we send these vans around, and they operate the whole year round. And they come to these villages, and people are queuing because they can have a free medical check by a qualified doctor. Now, obviously, if the doctor finds there is something wrong, then they send them to the right clinic, to the hospital, etc. But it is the basic medical check and the basic hygiene discussion with the mom that can be done. In emerging markets, we do it this way. In developed markets, it's through the hospital program, etc. But in the hospitals. But if there is no hospitals, and if the babies are delivered at home, this is the way how we do it. So creating a sustainable brand and finding ways how this can be done in emerging markets. All right, let me talk about trade and administrative barriers. And I think everybody is, again, aware of this, particularly in Africa. It is a major challenge, okay? And it is a major challenge, and if you look at Africa today, I heard the fact that 90% of goods that are consumed in Africa are being manufactured outside Africa, okay? So 90% of the consumption is actually being imported. So we talk about natural resources in Africa that are being exported out, and the goods are being then imported in. So it's a major problem, and it is created because of existence of so many countries in Africa that are creating different trade barriers and infrastructure barriers for a free flow of goods. I'm sure you know that there is COMESA, East African Community, and SADC, and ECOWAS on the West Africa coast. So there are existing trade blocks today within Africa. But if you are manufacturing in South Africa and you try to deliver your products to all the different countries in SADC, you are not doing that duty-free. There are some agreements, and there are some countries that are not actually allowing free entry of goods, or at least duty-free entry of goods. And very similarly, it is in ECOWAS in West Africa. So there is actually not one trade bloc. So despite the fact that you can look at Africa as one country, once you start to manufacture in one country, start to export it to the other countries, you start to hit these roadblocks or trade blocks that are there. Now, we know there is a vision of creating, actually between at least South and East Africa, Africa Free Trade Zone for the start. Hopefully this is 2, 3, 5 years a project, and that will really open kind of Cape to Cairo trade zone without any duties. If that happens, I think it will be absolutely fantastic, and it will open up the whole continent for more movements of goods. There is a debate. Is it the infrastructure or is it the tariffs? What is it that is preventing companies like us to have more of manufacturing going up and down? I believe it is the tariffs. Because if you open up the tariffs, the business will follow. The shipping lines will start to open, the roads will be built, and the railroads will be built as well. The good example of that is COMESA. COMESA is actually, from trade bloc point of view, the best trade bloc in Africa, at least from my point of view. And whatever you manufacture, for instance, in Egypt, you can ship it to Cairo. Now, are there shipping lines to Cairo, from Cairo to Mombasa? Yes, they are. There is no problem of infrastructure anymore. A sport that is working, sometimes it's congested, but it's working. The shipment lines follow the opening up of the trade barriers. So I believe that if, for instance, South Africa and Angola will remove the trade barriers, there will be a lot more goods flowing between Angola and South Africa, and the shipment lines will open, and the roads will be more used, and we will have more experienced people handling the products, etc. But now Angola is basically, their trade is within Brazil and Portugal, not within Africa. And there's a huge opportunity of addressing that. So that's one of the barriers that I would mention. The other one I would actually borrow from the CEO of ShopRite, who was on 702 a couple of weeks ago. And he said, that going to US, you ask for a visa once for 10 years. Going to Angola, you need to go every time in person to Pretoria for fingerprints, in person. Okay? And it's the same for us. Every time we go to some of these markets, there are administrative barriers that basically prevents you to go. So we need to work on that and trying to remove those barriers as we try to build a business across the continent. Just how we are addressing that. As we are speaking in this forum, we are, as a company, trying to address it through American Chamber of Commerce. We are talking to different ministers of different governments. We are trying to influence the key decision makers and trying to remove the trade barriers as a first step. And we are using the positive examples. As I said, the COMESA example is a great one, at least between Egypt and Kenya. Okay, so influencing the policymakers. No more time? Still okay?
Still okay.
I want to lead by example, so we'll see. All right, government as a partner. I think in all of what I said already, you need to partner with government. You need to get to the highest level possible to talk about the strategies. And sometimes it's, you enter the markets and people ask you, the first question is, when you are going to manufacture in this or that country? How much capital you will spend in the markets. But I think we try to move it beyond that communication and discussion. I'll come to that point in the fourth point of the challenges. I think the government, we need to create the right partnership. I think it's actually good in South Africa. The Department of Trade of Industry, they have a very good supporting program for people that want to invest. Then incentive programs of building a greenfield manufacturing sites. I think it's very developed, it's very structured as well. In some of the other emerging markets, it's not as structured as that. But again, if you approach the Ministry of Finance in Nigeria, they will be very welcoming any investment, and they will try to help you. Now, obviously, the question about corruption might come here. But what we've done in Nigeria, when I was there since 2005 to 2009, we actually declared very publicly and with the government that we will not be involved in any corrupt practices. And we will just stay away from it. And we declare it to the president of the country, and we declare it to different ministers. And we say, if your people will come and ask us for money, for bribe, we will actually elevate this to you. Because we don't operate like this, and we will succeed with our values and principles as we do anywhere in the world. And we got our actually manufacturing going in Nigeria on time, actually in record time, 18 months. We built a factory from groundbreaking event to production. And all of that was done the right way how to handle business. As much as when President Obasanjo was leaving the office. So, media and government did research on the companies that are changing Nigeria to become the modern country. And we were selected as one of the companies that were leading the way because of the practices we declared and because of the intentions we declared and the capital spending, obviously, as well. But I think it was something that worked very well for us. So I think you can succeed, even though there might be some local practices that you do not want to accept and you will not accept. But on the positive side, I think working with the government officials like DTI, using the current policies, but also influencing the future policies like the trade zones. The next one is actually an interesting one. It links back, delivering the right value equation. As I already said, whenever you come to any country in the world, and particularly emerging markets, and you start to talk about your presence in the market, the first question comes, when you are going to manufacture in my country. And we try to explain it that you need to have the right scale to be able to deliver the right value equation for the consumer. It's relatively easy to open a small scale factory in, let's say, Botswana, okay? But I guarantee you that because of the small scale, it will not be competitive. The prices of the products that will be manufactured in that country will go very high. As a result of that, you will never create scale. As a result of that, a couple years down the road, you will shut down the factory. Okay? And we see that in Africa. People that open too many factories around are shutting them down because you cannot create scale. So it's much better if you change your approach and you say, okay, I will first I will the country, and I need to do it on importation basis. And once I build a scale, then I will invest in local manufacturing. And that is an example of what we did in Nigeria. We had time window when we were importing products into the country, and then finally we built a local manufacturing. And as we built it, we built further scale. As the cost went down, we could actually reflect it in the pricing. And then after that, we've been able to invest even more, and we are building a mega site as we speak right now in Lagos. Now, the other approach is also that you need to explain to the government officials and to the general public that capital investment is not the only investment that you are making in the emerging markets. It is the investment into the organization, into people, into creating skills, and also in local suppliers, like advertising agencies, media, all of that you consume as you start to develop the business. And actually, if you accumulate that over a few years, you will see that investment is bigger sometimes than the capital investment they have in mind for a very small local production. So I think that's a balancing act. But the balancing act is so important to have the right value equation in the market. And that's why I talk about also the trade zones, because if you can use the trade zones, at least initially, you can bring the right product at the right price into the market. You are creating scale. And then after that, you can manufacture in, obviously, the biggest markets in the region. Like I said, Nigeria or here in South Africa. Okay. The other challenge that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, but it is part of the journey, is the infrastructure. And here we go in Nigeria. If you want to manufacture in the country and you want to have sustainable production, you basically need to think about not only your own manufacturing process, but also about how do you support it. So for instance, we produce 90% of our energy for our factories in Nigeria. You cannot rely on the national power grid. You have to have your own generators to generate your energy. So you have your power station basically next to your manufacturing site to produce energy. Similar with water and security and so on and so on. Okay? So infrastructure is a challenge. I didn't put it as a specific point because there is a way how you can fix it. Sometimes it's very expensive, like in Nigeria, but that cannot stop you. The other challenges in infrastructure might be the road infrastructure or the existence of retailers as you know them from South Africa. Basically outside South Africa, most of the trade is small stores. That's my 5 minutes? Okay, very good. And so infrastructure is definitely a challenge, but it can be addressed. And the last challenge that I want to talk about is skilled and experienced workforce. As we are entering the markets, obviously the education is catching up. I know there's a lot of discussion in Africa, in South Africa, about improving further education. But it's not about education only. It is about having the skilled and experienced workforce. So you need to have programs that you hire people, you train them, you develop them, and you retain them. And it needs to be a core of any company strategy. In P&G, how we address this is actually we put the organizational strategy or HR strategy ahead of the business. So whenever we talk with our organization about the business results, we don't start with what was our sales and profit and market share. We start where we are in our building organization strategy. How many new people we hired, how many of them are designated groups in South Africa, what is our retention rate, what is our survey, what our people are telling us about the company. All of that is before we talk the business. Because we really believe that you can create a very good, skilled, and experienced workforce by putting the strategy really ahead of everything else. The other thing we are doing is, and that's for the multinational, obviously we have that advantage, we send people abroad. We have a very good program. For instance, when we opened a factory here in manufacturing site in Kempton Park, we sent 30 people to a sister plant in Poland, new hires. We hire them and we send them out to learn the manufacturing process that we want to have in South Africa, in Poland. We are sending people to our other offices, either in Geneva or Cincinnati or elsewhere, to acquire the skills that they need when they come back. So obviously that's something that you can do as a multinational, but I would definitely, how to address the challenge is put the organizational strategy and the people strategy a little bit ahead of the business. Now you need to do it in a very balanced way, but I think it's very important to have this deliberate approach to it. Okay? So that's it. These are my 5 challenges in the emerging markets, and how we are trying to address them. I don't know if you have any questions. If you have 1 or 2 minutes for that, maybe we can take them. And thank you very much for your attention.